With the discovery and confirmation of commercial oil resources in the Albertine Graben of Uganda, the country is in high expectations of fast-tracking its economy into a middle-income nation. The country is ripe with talk of how this resource will make a contribution to completing the eradication of poverty in Uganda. The Albertine Graben, where petroleum has been discovered in Uganda, forms the northernmost part of the western arm of the East African Rift System and runs along Uganda's western border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. For many years, Uganda has had on and off attempts at establishing its petroleum potential. In 1928, a government geologist, E.J. Wayland, documented the presence of hydrocarbons in the Albertine Graben. This was followed by drilling of the first deep wells in 1938 and other shallow wells up till 1945. These efforts were discontinued with the upsurge of the Second World War and the colonial policy which zoned East Africa for agriculture. This situation was not made any better with the country's political turmoil after independence in 1962, characterized by rampant changes in government. This status changed starting in the early 1980s when an aeromagnetic survey and other ground follow-up surveys undertaken between 1983 and 1992 produced a ray of hope. Coupled with political stability under the NRM government, which took power in 1986, the petroleum exploration effort was continued in earnest. The petroleum potential of the Albertine Graben was confirmed with the discovery of oil at Mputa and Waraga, estimated at 100 to 400 million barrels of oil by Hardman Resources in 2006. Earlier efforts between 2002 and 2004 were made to drill oil on the Turako prospect in Semuliki Basin. The well drilled had natural gas contaminated by carbon dioxide.
This was the first discovery, and this is where that good news came from. So it is very important that everybody makes a stop over here.
The well is about 1 kilometer deep, and the oil column is about 850 to 900 meters. Mputa field may actually again be the first one to be produced.
In 1991, government created the Petroleum Exploration and Production Department, PEPD, in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development to establish and promote the petroleum potential of the country. The department is mandated with promoting the country's petroleum potential, monitoring and regulating the company's license for exploration and production in the country. PEPD undertook ground surveys including extensive geological mapping, gravity and magnetic surveys in the entire Graben. Government, with the support of the private sector, also made sure that relevant software and equipment were procured to package the information and promote the oil potential of the country with a view to attract investment for petroleum exploration in the Graben. Promotional efforts led to the attraction of oil companies such as Heritage Oil and Gas, Hardman Resources, Tullow Oil, and more recently, CNOOC and Total. Oil companies that were contracted undertook seismic surveys on land and on Lake Albert. Critical to this process was the need to train human resource in the sustainable management of the country's oil and gas resources. The first batch of citizens who acquired training included Fred Kabagambe Kalisa, who is currently the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, and Ruben Kashambuzi, who was the Commissioner for the Petroleum Department between 1995 and 2008, and is now retired.
Obviously, skills are required if we have to sustain future production, if you have to expand the oil and gas business. Consequently, with the General Minister of Education, lots of work has been done. Uganda Petroleum Institute at Kibumba has been established to look at artisans and technicians. These artisans and technicians in this country are really missing. If one goes to a rig, you find people are being imported from Malaysia and so on and so forth. So that is why it is important to focus on these skills. And Kibumba is exactly doing that.
To date, 20 oil and gas discoveries have been made in the Albertine Graben. The oil and gas exploration activities in the Albertine Graben have had a 90% drilling success rate, with 75 of the 85 exploration and appraisal wells drilled to date encountering oil. In addition to oil, gas has also been discovered in Nzinze field. The discoveries made are being appraised through drilling of appraisal wells and extended well testing.
This field has 3 wells, 1, 2, and 3, and this is 3. And this field has discovered both oil and gas. And the intention the government has is to produce gas and use it for generation of power, and then produce oil at a later date.
We have a big oil field in here within the park, and after that we drilled another well further north, which is Jobi 2, and also found oil in that. So it ended up having a stretch of like 10 kilometers, 5 north, 5 south, as one field. Then we went further east, drilled another well called the Jobi East 1 and another on Jobi East 2. They also hit oil. So we have like come to a conclusion that we have a field which is so big within here in the Marshall Falls National Park, with a total estimated resource of about 1.2 billion barrels. And out of that, when we start production, we think we'll be able to recover about 400 million barrels.
The discovery and confirmation of commercial reserves of petroleum in Uganda in 2006 created excellent opportunities for exploration, but also brought forth challenges including anxiety and high expectations by the population, environmental management concerns, the need to develop skills and expertise, national participation in the sector, concerns on management of oil revenues, and the need to update the legal and regulatory framework for the sector.
At the end of it all, we will have admirable legislation for the sector that can be implemented to support the achievement of the goal of our national oil and gas policy, which is to use the country's oil and gas resources to contribute to early achievement of poverty eradication and create lasting value to society.
As we move into development and production, government has put into place petroleum revenue management policy to handle assessment, collection, and administration through the relevant tax laws, banking, and accountability through the Public Finance Bill, which includes establishment of a petroleum fund, both as a financing fund, a savings fund, and a focal point for cabinet oversight of all petroleum revenues.
Government therefore formulated a national oil and gas policy for the country through a consultative process. The formulation process evolved from 2006 to 2008 when the policy was approved. The policy articulates government's goals and objectives in the development and utilization of oil and gas resources. The President of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has played a significant role in ensuring the oil and gas sector moves forward, and he continues to guide the sector. This policy was approved by Cabinet in 2008 and gives key insights into guiding principles and strategies of managing the sector. Critical to the proper management of the sector is communication and engagement amongst all stakeholders, including government ministries, agencies and departments, parliament, local government and communities, oil companies, the media, and civil society.
As representatives of our people, we need to prepare adequately for this legislation. We need to listen, we need to understand, and use this opportunity to transform this country through this oil and gas sector.
The money for oil should only be used for creating durable capacity for the country so that future generations would also benefit from this resource.
A communication strategy was developed and is under implementation. This communication strategy is guiding the sector in managing expectations by disseminating information about the sector to the public. To address some of the information gaps, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development embarked on massive sensitization drives, starting with Parliament as the legislative body. In a highly attended interactive workshop, members of parliament were taken through the country's oil prospects and they appreciated the need for proper legislation to manage the resource.
The petroleum bills provide for separation of industry promotion and policy setting from regulation, commercial aspects, and oversight. The roles of the three arms of government, that is the parliament, executive, and judiciary, have been equally separated. Parliament will continue to make laws for the sector, monitor the performance of the petroleum sector through policy statements and annual budgets, and play the oversight role.
It describes how the petroleum value chain is divided in the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream. The upstream part of the petroleum value chain covers licensing, exploration, development, production of oil, and decommissioning.
Also critical to the management of the oil resource in Uganda is the need for updated legislation of the industry. In February 2012, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development presented two bills to Parliament, namely the Petroleum Exploration, Development and Production Bill, which was passed into law in December 2012. The second is the Petroleum Refining, Gas Conversion, Transportation and Storage Bill 2012.
With the discovery of oil, the NRM government embarked on a new task of formulating a comprehensive policy to guide development of that sector. The National Oil and Gas Policy for Uganda was therefore put in place in 2008. The policy gives a clear roadmap on how oil in Uganda will be produced, value added to it, and how petroleum revenues will be used to create lasting value for our society.
The National Oil and Gas Policy 2008 recommended that in order to ensure valuable utilization of the resources, the country should develop a refinery with a view of supplying the national and regional petroleum products demand. A feasibility study on refining in the country was concluded in September 2010. This study, which was undertaken by Foster Wheeler of UK, has defined key aspects of developing a refinery in Uganda like size, configuration, location, financing and markets for the products. Uganda currently spends over $1 billion on importation of petroleum products annually, and building a refinery would largely reduce on this import bill.
What we have done so far, we have pegged and marked this area for the refinery. What is remaining now, or what is being undertaken right now, is a resettlement action plan for this area to take down the people's property, to look at their homesteads, to look at compensation issues.
In developing the refinery that was recommended by the feasibility study of 60,000 barrels of oil per day, government has decided to start with a smaller refinery of 20,000 barrels of oil per day, because the smaller refinery comes earlier. So the earlier you have some petroleum products on the market, the better. The smaller refinery is also cheaper. The estimates in the study was that a 20,000 barrel per day refinery would cost in the range of $500 million, whereas the refinery of 60,000 barrels of oil per day would cost $2 billion. So the effort to find $2 billion will probably take longer, leave alone the construction that will take 5 years. Hence the recommendation of the ministry and government to start with a smaller refinery of 20,000 barrels of oil per day.
Development of the sector necessitated local skilled labor to manage the oil and gas industry. A number of training institutions have since been put up, including the Uganda Petroleum Institute in Kigumba, Chiriandongo district. The country's top university, Makerere University, conducts bachelor's and master's degree programs in petroleum geoscience to train Ugandans in oil and gas-related matters.
Makerere University, working with us, with the ministry, has now advanced in its course on petroleum geoscience and petroleum engineering. As a matter of fact, now they are starting a master's program in petroleum geoscience and petroleum engineering. And through negotiations of the Minister of Energy and Mineral Development, this company called Schlumberger managed to give a very good laboratory to Makerere University recently, worth $4 million in the oil and gas business.
The Albertine Graben is known for its high biodiversity spots, although it is now also an oil-rich region. Oil is a non-renewable resource, meaning that at one time it will be exhausted. This implies that care has to be taken in ensuring that exploitation of oil resources is done without much effect to the environment in the Graben. This has necessitated the close involvement of Uganda Wildlife Authority and the National Environment Management Authority to issue guidelines for the harmonious existence of both the tourism and oil activities without degrading the environment.
We have to work very closely with the UA and NEMA so that we produce this resource for the benefit of the nation and also at the same time preserve the park.
One of the biggest things that we did as Uganda Wildlife Authority was to come up with guidelines, oil monitoring guidelines that put in place regulations and, directions on how we will relate and work with oil companies. And one of them was to ensure that when they're in the parks, they drive at a certain speed, 40 kilometers per hour. And of course, we also insisted in the guidelines. The guidelines will provide that oil pads cannot be constructed in highly ecological sensitive areas. And those are areas where you find animals breeding, where animals mate, migration routes.
The wellhead is just inside this box. This was an innovation to make this completion and disguise it from tourists and also from animals.
It is our mandate as Uganda Wildlife Authority to see that it's a win-win situation for the oil guys and for the tourism guys.
Experience in the industry has shown that for a country to benefit from the sector, its farms and individuals must be actively involved. Participation of individuals helps them appreciate the oil industry and relate to its benefits, thus reducing the anxiety of the community. Uganda is treading along this path to ensure that oil is a blessing to the nation. Some of the world's largest oil companies, including Total from France and China's National Oil Offshore Corporation, CNOOC, joined Tullow Oil of the United Kingdom in 2012 to continue exploration and appraisal of the oil fields discovered in the Albertine Graben. These companies were preceded by Hardman, which made the first discovery in 2006, Heritage Oil and Gas, and Neptune Petroleum Uganda Limited. Uganda's oil reserves now stand at 3.5 billion barrels of oil, with an estimated recoverable oil of 1.2 billion barrels. This sector is expected to bring a number of benefits, including improvements in health, education, and growth in businesses.
10% is one estimate of the potential contribution of our petroleum resources to our annual GDP, assuming present international oil prices and a 25-year life for our present oil resources. It validates the government's plan that oil revenues shall be instrumental in the development of a strong and competitive economy. Oil as part of the overall economy and not as a parallel economy. Oil is a natural resource, just like our agricultural potential. But however, oil is a finite resource. It will deplete. Therefore, this depletable underground resource should, during its lifetime, help to ensure and facilitate development of the renewable above-ground resource.
The potential for this sector to contribute to the development of Uganda and the East African region is now more evident. The discovery of petroleum in Uganda, South Sudan, and more recently in Kenya, together with the exploration and production of gas in Tanzania and Mozambique, indeed confirm that the East African region is emerging as a new and exciting frontier for oil and gas exploration and investment within Africa.